Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the What the Heal podcast. My name is Maria Sellars, and I am your host along this journey. And today I have the absolute honor of being joined by Danielle Hamilton. So I'm really excited to have you here, Danielle. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Maria. Excited to be here and honored to be a guest and talk about some of my favorite topics today.
Yes. Well, for those of you who don't know, Danielle is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner who specializes in blood sugar regulation and digestion. She became interested in blood sugar issues when she learned that insulin resistance was at the root of her PCOS. She was able to reverse her PCOS, cystic acne, PMS, and weight loss resistance by reversing insulin resistance. Her mission to help others uncover their blood sugar and insulin issues, as most people don't know the early signs, as well as help them optimize digestion for low-carb diets. Dani promotes a holistic approach to reversing insulin resistance, which goes beyond just changing macros. She is the host of the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast and the creator of the Blood Sugar Mastery program. It truly is an honor to have you on, Dani. So tell me, what the heal is going on?
I love that. I am just excited to be here and chat about a topic that really it was something that if I heard the words blood sugar or insulin resistance, I would automatically glaze over. I'm like, I don't have diabetes. This doesn't pertain to me. This feels complicated and uncomfortable, and I don't have to worry about this. So I just felt like really disconnected from this topic for a really long time until I learned that blood sugar issues were actually at the root of almost all of my issues. And it was something that I didn't realize, that our blood sugar affects how we feel at every second of every day. And it also has huge impacts on our long-term health. And our blood sugar affects every single cell, organ, and process in our body. So how we have energy, if we're able to go to sleep, our hormone balance, and all these things. So if our blood sugar is not working for us, it's working against us in a big, big way. And so it's something that, while you may be thinking maybe what I was thinking, like, I don't have diabetes, I don't have to pay attention to this, you will be shocked at how much you might relate to a lot of the symptoms, even if you don't have diabetes, even if you don't think you have anything going on. I think a big takeaway from that I learned actually was that diabetes isn't an on and off switch. So it sort of happens gradually. And I didn't know the symptoms of being diabetic. So I certainly didn't know the early symptoms. And those were the ones that were really, really hitting me. So excited to dive in.
Yes, no, I really love that. The blood sugar, if it's not working for us, it's working against us. So many people don't have an understanding of the way that the blood sugar works within the body. So I'm so excited to have you on and to dive a little deeper into that. So tell us a little bit more about what got you started. I know you mentioned the early signs of blood insulin resistance. So what did those early signs look like for you? What did the path look like for you in uncovering all of this?
Yeah, so I can start back a little bit earlier with kind of my journey, because I think that storytelling is so important, because we can find so many elements that of ourselves and relate in so many different ways. So basically, I was a normal kid, I guess you'd say. Grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that meant I was eating a low-fat diet, snack wells and chewy granola bars and Eggo waffles and toaster strudels and low-fat snacks. And if it was a processed breakfast food, it had my name on it. And I was, not surprisingly, kind of plagued with having a lot of sicknesses. So I had colds and flus and ear infections and strep throat and tons of antibiotics, and just wasn't robustly healthy. And I would always say that I had a sweet tooth and, definitely tended towards wanting sugar, but I thought that was my personality because I had a sweet tooth, right? And so as I got older, I started getting strep throat a lot. My senior year of high school, I had to get my tonsils out. The next year I went to college, my diet got worse. I, started drinking more and staying up late and stressed. And I developed really bad seasonal allergies And the allergies were really bad. I had asthma, and then I moved down to Miami, Florida, and the season for allergies was all year round. And so I found out I was even allergic to palm trees, and I thought, this is like a cruel joke. Is that even possible? So as it turns out, I was just allergic to so many things. I needed to be living in a bubble. I was on multiple medications, inhalers, allergy pills, Singular, Zyrtex, you name it. I was on, I had allergy shots. So you can get shots and they give you a little bit of a stronger dose of the allergen every time. So your body learns to not react to it. And I was allergic to so many things that I was getting 3 shots because all my allergens couldn't fit into one. And then I was doing much better after the allergy shots after about a year. But then a year later, I started to develop more allergies. So I got 2 more shots. So now, if you're keeping up, I was getting 5 shots every other day. I was going broke on the copays. This was in my early 20s. So, I mean, I was really struggling. I had chronic sinus infections, candida infection. I mean, just you name it. I was just so sickly and so tired. I was so fatigued from all these allergy medicines. I was in a fog. And I had always struggled with acne, struggled with my weight. I mean, I was just a mess. And I was working at the time in a nursing home, and I was a speech pathologist there, and I was looking at all my patients, and I had to do a lot of chart reviews. I'd write down all their diagnoses. I'd write down all their medications. And I mean, these lists were long. And I was like, I could see this parallel line. Like, if these people are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I'm in my early 20s, and I already have a stack of medications myself, I'm like, what's going to happen when I get to this age? And I knew that if something didn't change, I would be just set up on this trajectory. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to change. I asked every doctor, like, why is this happening to me? What can I do? And their answer was, oh, just take the shots, take the medications, must be bad luck, must be genetics. And that was really disempowering because I can't do anything about my luck or my genetics. And so by the grace of the universe, a book landed in my hand called The Paleo Diet Solution by Rob Wolf. And this book basically talked about the fact that everything we've been taught about nutrition has been wrong. And it kind of flipped everything that I knew on its head. So take the food pyramid, for example, flip it on its head, much better, right? It said, don't eat processed food, eat real food. Don't avoid salt, eat real salt. Don't avoid meat and fat, eat the healthy meats and fats. And it was really liberating to hear this because I had always noticed, like, how come my generation needs braces and my mom's generation, they don't need braces? How come I needed glasses really young? You know, like, how come we need all these things? How come I need all these medications? What if these weren't invented like a couple of 100 years ago? Like, I needed so many new medical inventions that it was just something always on my mind. So it was really exciting to hear this information because it felt like my whole world started making sense, and I just wanted to shout it from the top of a mountain. And so I tried eating this way, eating this paleo whole foods diet. I got rid of all the processed foods, and like magic, I can't describe it any other way, I got rid of my allergies, my asthma, my sinus infections. I no longer take any allergy or asthma medications. I mean, I stopped giving them the shots to myself a really long time ago, like right after I started eating that way. And it was just amazing that my body healed itself. And I think that we sometimes are so disconnected. You know, one of the things that I would say was, oh, my body hates me, it's rebelling against me. But our bodies are trying to heal all the time. Like, if we cut our hand, what do we need to do so our body heals? Nothing. It just goes. It just does it, right? And that process is happening inside of our bodies too. So sometimes we need to remove those blocking factors. We need to remove those blocking factors from healing. And we also need to give the body what it needs to heal. So those like raw nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, etc. So I was flying high, feeling great, and I had a really stressful year. And unfortunately, I started to develop tons of hormonal symptoms, and I was welcomed into the, wonderful world of female hormones in my mid-20s. And my period was late. I didn't get it for 6 months. My acne that I had always struggled with was getting worse. I mean, it was way worse than I had ever imagined. I thought it was supposed to be getting better.
That's all while you were on the paleo diet too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was starting to get all these weird symptoms, and I was gaining weight, and I was so tired. And I was like, this was just the diet that healed me. So what is possibly going on right now? So I realized that I might have this syndrome called polycystic ovarian syndrome, just based on Googling. And as it turns out, I did. And I tried to do all the advice out there to fix it. And so basically my hormones, my female hormones, male hormones were a mess. My testosterone, my progesterone, my estrogen, they were out of balance, driving all these symptoms. And I was trying to, take supplements and do what they were telling me, but I felt like I was already eating the diet they recommended. So I just tried to paleo harder. And because I didn't change anything, nothing changed. It didn't work. So I was listening to podcasts, and I heard this one podcast say, PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries. And I almost drove my car off the road. Like I almost got into an accident. And so I was like, wait, what do I know about diabetes? And I thought, basically nothing. Something about blood sugar, something about amputations, because some of my speech therapy patients had amputations who had diabetes. That's all I knew. And so I said, I really need to dig into this because I think this is a big problem for me. So like I was saying at the beginning, I didn't realize that there were blood sugar. I'm like, I have to have some symptoms of blood sugar issues or something like that. And I didn't know what those were. So after doing a lot of research, I actually went back to school. I became a nutritional therapy practitioner so I could heal myself, because this stuff is complicated, right? And I realized, oh my goodness, I have so many of those symptoms. And so I looked back and I said, okay, I consider myself someone with a sweet tooth, right? That's not a personality trait. That is driven by my blood sugar. I was a person, I used to think I was a breakfast person. Well, I was only a breakfast person because I'd wake up shaking and need to eat breakfast right away because my blood sugar was going too low. And so my symptom was that I was shaky. I used to also get a little shaky and anxious after coffee, and I thought it was the caffeine, but it turns out my blood sugar was crashing. I used to hate doing fasting blood work because I hated fasting. I used to hate being hungry because hunger to me didn't feel like, oh, I'm hungry. It felt like I was going to die. I used to eat before I went out to eat. I never left the house without food in my purse. And I would be that hangry friend. Like I would be like, I need to eat right now. Hunger felt very urgent and uncomfortable in my body. It felt very panicky. And I did not know that any of these things were signs of blood sugar issues. And meanwhile, they were, and they were really, really impacting me. So once I learned that and then I had all those symptoms of the weight gain and the acne and the hormone issues. So those were sort of more
the allergies and
sinuses,
these were more strep throat.
Progressed. Yeah, these were more progressed issues of the blood sugar stuff. And so I realized I had a whole plethora of them. And so I started to address my blood sugar issues. And when I changed my diet and I adopted different lifestyle strategies and habits, and I was able to successfully optimize my blood sugar, get rid of my insulin resistance, my PCOS went away, and I no longer struggle with any of those symptoms whatsoever. So again, I had to heal myself, but I had to pivot, and I really had to focus on blood sugar this time. And it was amazing how different I feel on the other side of it.
Yes, that is amazing to be able to work through all of those things. And you know what you said, where you had to go back to school to learn how to heal yourself with all the different struggles that you'd been in and all the different doctor's appointments and giving yourself 5 allergy injections. That is big. I mean, that is really big. And it's so many people are out there going through all of those same things and not realizing that there are options and that they do have a solution, and that solution doesn't have to be a medication. They can take that power and that control back into their own hands. And what I love about you is you went back to school for it, but then you've created all types of programs so other people don't have to go back to school to learn to do the same things, but can learn to heal themselves in those ways. So I'm just so honored to have you on the What the Heal, because this is exactly what this podcast is about, is shining lights on the different solutions that are out there for people, and sharing their different stories. People, in hearing the way that you talk, can sit there and go, oh my gosh, that's me, I experienced that too. And so you sharing this is so powerful, and I just really love what you've put together to help impact people in the same way that you've been impacted. And I mean, you literally had a whole career change because of this, which I just think is amazing. I remember talking about you when you were going through it and getting ready to say, I'm not going to be a speech pathologist anymore. Like, this is my direction. And to see all of the lives that you've changed through this is just amazing. So I'm so proud of you for what you've done for you and what you do for others too.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really feel like I have been put on this earth to help other people heal and just feel empowered, because I was in such a dark place multiple times on my health journey, and it really felt, I mean, nothing feels worse than being hopeless, right? Like feeling like you have no option, you have no control, you have no power over this. And I want to teach people that they have so much control and power and a say in their health, and they can change how they feel, and they don't have to be, a slave to the medical system, and they can feel so much better. I mean, I used to struggle with chronic tendonitis in my ankle. I don't have that anymore once I changed my diet. Like, the craziest things can change when you change your nutrition. And I think that so often we forget, we're so disconnected from not only where our food comes from, but what happens when our food goes inside of our body. The food that we eat becomes us. We are made of the food that we eat. And I don't think that we really recognize that, right? Like, we're breaking down the food to get the vitamins, minerals, the proteins, the building blocks, the fats, to build our structure, to power our body. And so just knowing that is really powerful. It's like, oh my goodness, like, I have this huge responsibility, because this is in my hands. Like, your health is in your hands. And a lot of people in my health community, they say no one's coming to save you, and it sounds kind of harsh, but it's true. And I think that people need that. Like, no one is coming to save you. You have to do this on your own, because the way the mainstream medical system is set up, it's not set up for prevention and wellness. It's set up for symptom management and acute care. They're fantastic at acute care. I get in a car accident, please don't give me essential oils. Please take me to the nearest emergency room. Like, right? Like, let's call a spade a spade. They shine in emergency medicine and surgeries and all these things. But when it comes to health and wellness and healing and prevention, you're not going to really get a lot of answers from there. And I have been I've been very jaded from the mainstream medical, system. And I'm sure so many of you here have been as well. A lot of gaslighting going on, a lot of, well, it must be in your head. Well, it must be anxiety. Well, it can't happen. You're fine because your blood work is fine. And I just want you, if you're questioning things, if you're saying, why is this happening to me? If you're saying, I know there has to be another answer, I want you to listen to that intuition and follow that intuition and find people who have healed what you have. Because most of the things that we can possibly get, chronic lifestyle issues, I should say, can be improved drastically with diet, lifestyle, and other healing modalities. And I just want people to feel empowered that they have the tools, that they can find these tools to heal themselves, and that, doctor means teacher. And so they should be teaching us things. And if they're not, go find your lessons elsewhere from people who are teaching, who resonate with you, because there's people out there who are doing incredible things, and you can have that too.
Yes, it's so true. And it's, it's medicine or it's poison. And many people are unaware of that. They're like, well, they wouldn't sell it in the grocery store if it wasn't good for you. Like, that is so not true. If the whole middle part of the grocery store is basically just all a chemical shitstorm. And people who think that they're eating, healthy foods, granola and things like that, not having an understanding of the impact that it has on the body. I love what you did with your the glucose monitor. I remember when you first started working with that. Tell us a little bit more about, oh, you've got it on. Oh my goodness. Is that a whole new one now too?
This one just has a sticker over it.
Oh,
so
okay.
It doesn't fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, watching your post where you talk about the different spikes within the blood sugar and how that all looks when you think you're eating, quote unquote healthy, and then the way that impacts the blood sugar. So not all health foods, actually many health foods we've been led to believe are not health foods at all. So if you can talk a little bit more about that and, that your whole glucose monitoring procedure.
Yeah, sure. So I think what's really important to understand is just like the basics, the 101 on how blood sugar works and affects us, so we can see like what do we actually need to improve? What does it mean to have balanced blood sugar? What is that even possible? Is that a thing? Like, what is blood sugar? What is insulin? Why does it matter? So this, don't glaze over. Stay with me. It's going to be super easy to understand, okay? So we eat some carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates break down to sugar. The sugar digests and goes into our bloodstream. Our bloodstream always likes to have, our body likes to have in the bloodstream a small amount of glucose or sugar at all times in the bloodstream, just for quick energy. And it's about that amount is about a teaspoon. So it's not a lot of sugar in the blood at all times, but it likes to have about a teaspoon. So we think about our blood sugar like Goldilocks. It doesn't like to be too much. It doesn't like to be too low. It likes to be just right in this happy Goldilocks zone. Okay, so if we eat some sugar and carbohydrates, it will digest and increase the amount of sugar that's in our blood. So now the sugar in our blood, or our blood sugar, went up. Our pancreas is going to sense that, oh, the blood sugar is going into that too high range. So it's going to pump out this hormone called insulin. Insulin's job is to take the sugar out of the blood and put it into the cells of the body, like into the heart, into the liver, into the muscles. So it could be used to make energy, or it could be stored as body fat for later. That's what body fat is. It's just stored energy. Okay, so now the amount of sugar that was in the blood was just high, but the insulin put some of it into the cells of the body, use it to make energy, and now the blood sugar returned to normal. So insulin's job is partially to lower blood sugar, right? Because it puts it away. And now we have, we're back to normal. But what happens when we eat the standard American diet? The standard American diet is the diet that we all grew up, the government, the food pyramid told us to eat, right?
The lies it created.
It's fast food. It's, chips and crackers and French fries and, milkshakes and cereal and all these types of foods. So when we eat the standard American diet, which is very high in processed carbohydrates, which are way worse for our blood sugar than healthy whole food carbohydrates, when we eat too often, because remember they also told us that we have to eat 6 times a day to keep our metabolisms going, right? Or else we'd go into starvation mode and put on weight. Wait, if I don't eat between breakfast and lunch, you're going to tell me that I'm going to put on weight because I'm going into starvation mode?
And we all have that same amount of calories we should be eating per day too. So
Right. Yeah. So they told us to eat often. They told us to eat, healthy whole grains. And I say that in quotation marks. And so we're eating these high amounts of carbohydrates that are highly processed. We're eating too often. And what happens is the insulin and blood sugar keep getting spiked. So now we get a spike of blood sugar because we ate a bowl of cereal and then we went back for a second one instead of having, like eggs and maybe some berries at breakfast, right? So we're eating these processed carbs. We get a big spike of our glucose because it hits our bloodstream really fast. And now the pancreas is like, oh shit, we need a ton of insulin. So it sends up a ton of insulin to put away all that sugar. And sometimes it overshoots. And so now the insulin is putting away all the sugar into the body. And a lot of it's going to get stored as body fat because we don't need that much energy. We're sitting at our desks all day, right? We're sitting in school. We're sitting at our work. And so it leads to weight gain for sure. And then what happens is that too much insulin will often drive the blood sugar to go too low because it just overshoots. It shot out too much insulin by accident. And now the blood sugar is going really low. And what do you feel when your blood sugar goes low? You start to feel anxious. You feel dizzy, shaky, lightheaded, panicky. You might feel brain fog, headaches, sweating, and you feel cravings because your body's like, hey, I'm running out of energy. I need fast energy. You start to get hangry. You're like, give me something right now. Like you're mean to your spouse or you bite your kid's head off, because you need something. You turn into the person in the Snickers commercial.
Yeah.
That is a blood sugar low that is driving you to feel that way. That's not healthy hunger. That's a blood sugar low. And so what do you do when your blood sugar goes low? You go to Starbucks, you go to the drive-thru, you grab a granola bar, you go to the break room, grab a donut, you get some coffee and put some milk and sugar in it. You find fast carbs again. And so what happens next? You spike your blood sugar again.
You're stuck in that
and
perpetual,
it starts all over again.
Yes.
Exactly. So this is what's called the blood sugar roller coaster, where we eat carbs and sugar. We don't have these balanced meals. We spike our blood sugar. It goes too low. We start to get all these symptoms of cravings, anxiety, all these things, and then we spike it again. And so that's why we become very dependent on sugar and carbohydrates to give us energy. So all this time that this is happening, our blood sugar is spiking and coming down. So the blood sugar is spiking and crashing, and we feel that. We feel it in our physiology. It doesn't feel good. We have lots of potential for those symptoms. But the insulin, the hormone insulin, is going up and doesn't come down quite as fast as the blood sugar. So all this time, the level of insulin in our blood starts to build up, and it gets higher and higher and higher. And insulin, the hormone, tells the body to store fat, to store sugar. Its message is, hey, we got to get this sugar out of here. We got to store it. We got to put it into the body. That's what it does. So eventually, we can see that can lead to excess body fat, like I said. But it can also lead to insulin resistance because now there's so much insulin. It's almost like the boy who cried wolf. The insulin's knocking on the door of the cell and is like, hey, I have some glucose for you. It's like, dude, you were just here. So it's like it stops listening to the message of insulin. So now you need more and more and more insulin to finally get the message through that, hey, we have sugar for you to put into the body. So what's happening at the same time is that the sugar is staying in your blood, not getting where it needs to be because the cells aren't listening to insulin. So now the cells there's nothing in there to make energy. So you feel hungry, you feel tired, and then you have high blood sugar because all the sugar keeps building up in your blood. Or you can have the reverse where there's so much insulin and it keeps crashing the blood sugar down. So you keep getting a lot of these symptoms. So we could see it go either way. Either way, it's not in that Goldilocks zone. It's too high, it's too low, and we start to get issues. And once that insulin resistance starts building up, the cells are not listening to insulin. The sugar can't get where it needs to go. You feel tired and hungry. You need to eat all the time. Then you go to the doctor. And finally, after decades of this happening, your doctor's like, oh, you might be pre-diabetic. You might be diabetic. But this has been going on for decades. Mm-hmm. And that's when the doctor catches it. So this is a big issue that we can catch this way before it starts happening with just those symptoms around our hunger. So if a meal gets delayed, or if we have a meeting and we have to run, late and our meal gets pushed back, or if we go to a gym class and then we're like, oh, let me run an errand before I head home. If you're like, no way, I need to go immediately and go have something to eat, you don't have that leeway. If you feel like, oh my goodness, if the server doesn't bring the food now, I'm going to eat the table. Those are the early symptoms of blood sugar issues. And then it starts getting worse and worse. But those are the early ones that we want to catch. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you think about it too. It's like they're early because they start so early. We're feeding kids cereal and, sugary yogurts and all of those things before school. And then we're like, oh, why can't you sit still? Well, no wonder why. I remember when I
Exactly.
first moved on my own, we had a box of cereal and a frozen pizza in the freezer. And I looked at the back of the two of those and compared ingredients. And honestly, the frozen pizza was the better thing to be eating for breakfast. It had way less sugar and so much more. I was like,
More protein.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck were our parents? Why were they feeding us this? That is so crazy. I mean, I remember that moment so clearly. Like, this is really, really backwards because, those sugary cereals are such a staple in our society. And it's like, so these problems really are growing on for decades because this stuff is building up within your body and you don't even realize it's happening. And a lot of times the doctors don't either. So, I'm so grateful for you and the work that you do to shine light on this, and to, help people understand what it is that's going on. Do you have some good hacks to help improve blood sugar? Some easy things that people can integrate into their day?
Yeah, so I think that knowing a little more about what food does to our blood sugar can really under, help us understand how to build a better plate that's going to be stabilizing for our blood sugar, and that will help us avoid having to only run on carbohydrates. So one of the other things I forgot to mention that insulin does is it blocks the body, because it's telling the body to store fat, it blocks the body from burning its own body fat. It blocks the body from accessing that body fat to use as energy or as fuel. It also blocks you from using the stored sugar that's in your liver. So high insulin levels mean you can't burn your body fat for energy. So we're supposed to be able to, in between meals, or if the meal goes longer, healthy hunger means our body's metabolism can access the stored sugar or a body fat to snack on, so to speak, while we're waiting to eat. But if you have such high insulin levels and you can't do that, then you're going to be more dependent on carbohydrates because you can't get your fuel any other place. So you have to eat very often. Carbohydrates are like twigs or kindling on the fire. And so they burn hot and fast. And fat is more like a log on the fire. It burns low and slow. So we want to be using fat a little bit more than just carbohydrates to get our energy. So those are the two energy sources that we have to sort of pull from. So fats and carbs are energy sources. Proteins are more building blocks. Okay, so those are the three macronutrients, or macros, if you hear that word. So it's really important that we try to get our insulin levels down by not spiking our blood sugar, so then we can access that stored body fat for energy. And even if we're not overweight, this is still at play. So some people just don't gain weight. There's about I think the number is maybe 12% of people, even with type 2 diabetes, who are thin and they don't gain body fat. So even if this is you, if you're like, oh my goodness, I'm such a carb addict, I need carbs all the time, I can't go without eating sugar, I'm so drawn to it, I have to have it all every so often. Even if you're underweight or at a healthy weight, this should be you too. Our body still, you don't have 0% body fat. We do have some body fat and stored sugar that we should be able to access between meals to stay energized, to keep our brain, working. So when we're hungry, we shouldn't be like, oh, I can't even think. We should be able to think when we're hungry, right? So what can we do? We have to think about maybe we could talk about what food groups are what foods are involved in carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, because I think that I sometimes take for granted that people know this, and I think it's something that would be a really good refresher. So carbohydrates are typically things like grains. So that would be wheat and barley and rye, and basically anything made of flour. So oats, those are grains. There's carbohydrates in legumes. So they're mostly carbohydrates. So those would be things like chickpeas and lentils and even peanuts. So there's a lot of carbohydrates in those, in fruits, and of course in a lot of processed foods, because a lot of processed foods are made from processing grains, or taking a potato, so starchy vegetables like potatoes and corn. So taking things like potato and making it into a potato chip, or like corn and making it into a tortilla chip, or wheat and making it into pizza crust, or, cereal. Okay, so these are the carbohydrates, and there are the ultra processed ones, and then the more natural ones. So the natural ones would be how they grew from the ground, right? So like a potato versus the chip. And always, without fail, a carbohydrate that is ultra processed is going to spike your blood sugar way more than a non-processed carbohydrate. So let's go back to the chip example. A potato chip is going to spike your blood sugar much more than a potato. A rice cake is going to spike your blood sugar more than rice. And so the processing is going to make the blood sugar spikes worse, because oftentimes we take out the fiber and we make it so digestible that it kind of melts in your mouth, right? And so the speed at which the sugar hits our bloodstream is really, really fast. Same thing with taking an apple and juicing it. So even though, in the in the yoga community, like having juices and all these things, vegetable juices can be okay, maybe with some lemon in there, but we really don't want to be juicing fruit, because that's really just like drinking straight sugar, even though there are nutrients. So it's better to keep the fiber with our fruits, because that will slow the absorption into the bloodstream, because the speed at which our blood sugar spikes is a big impactor into how it makes us feel. So a hack is eating carbohydrates that are in their whole food forms, like how they grew out of the ground. So that's a really big, and that's a big ask too, right? Like that's saying get rid of processed foods, basically. And that's a really important first step to healing. And that step can take people some time, right? But that's a big one. Another one would be, so the proteins and fats, let's look at those. So proteins, typically, I look at proteins as animal proteins, and that's the best source of proteins because they are in their most highly absorbable forms. They come with all the amino acids, and they're most digestible. There's no anti-nutrients with the proteins. So meats, eggs, fish, poultry, things like that. There is some minimal protein in legumes and some little bits in nuts and seeds, but those are not necessarily a really great source of protein. There's also some protein in dairy. A lot of people don't tolerate dairy, so it would depend on how you tolerate it. So getting lots of protein into your diet is really important. So many of us are protein deficient. For women, I would say on average, you want to aim for about at least 20 to 30 grams of protein at a meal. For guys who are bigger in size, or people who are bigger in size, you want to aim for like 30 to 50 grams of protein at each meal. And that's just a ballpark estimate. So every person will be different. But I want to throw those numbers out there because people are drastically under eating protein, and it's really important. Like, for example, you think you're doing a good job by eating 2 eggs at breakfast because that's really great and stable for your blood sugar, but 2 eggs is only 12 grams of protein. So it's really not enough food. And so don't be afraid to add more eggs and more other, protein sources to your breakfast. So eating lots of protein at your meal is also really going to help stabilize your blood sugar, and it's going to help you stay satiated, because protein is the most satiating macronutrient. If you are hungry, but you're not in the mood for protein, you're probably not hungry. You're probably having a craving, because our bodies will also kind of overeat until we hit our protein needs. And so by even just having your protein first at a meal can really help you get in the protein you need and also satiate you so you're not overeating. And you can sort of naturally eat the right amount of food for your body without even thinking about it, because you eat all your protein first and then you eat the rest of the foods on your plate. And most of the time, like, you just don't feel, you're almost too full to eat some of the rest of the food, like some of the extra carbohydrates. So that can be really helpful, having those proteins. Did you have a question?
That's a great tip. No, that's really good. I was like, I've not heard that before, making sure to do that part first, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and then we have fats, and fats have been classically demonized, especially in the 80s and 90s. Yes. And man-made fats like seed oils, like canola oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, grapeseed, rapeseed, rice bran, corn, cottonseed, peanut oil. These oils that are in those clear bottles, they're yellow. These are ultra processed, and they are dyed, they're bleached, they're degummed, they're like de-waxed. I mean, the process through which these used to be industrial oils, and they found that they're like sort of edible. These are honestly, I would tell you to eat sugar before I tell you to have these oils. That is how bad these oils are for you, and they are everywhere. Like your whole life is about
mind
to change
blown.
because,
Yes.
yeah, you're gonna flip over everything that you have in your house and look at all the ingredients. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, these oils are freaking everywhere. Why is sunflower oil and everything all of a sudden? And it's because people are catching on to the fact that canola and soy are so bad, and they are now putting sunflower in everything. And these oils are high in omega-6 linoleic fatty acids, which are very inflammatory. They inflame the cell membrane, driving insulin resistance. They are just about linked to every single inflammatory chronic illness ever. They cause weight gain. I mean, they're horrible for human health. Horrible.
And they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, and they take years to get out of your body because they incorporate themselves into the cell membrane. Because that's what fats, our cell membranes are made up of fats that we eat, right? So it's not like the food goes in and comes out and our body is separate from that. Remember, our body is building from the foods that we eat. So if you eat Cheetos, you're made of Cheetos, right? So that's the fats are very important, and we don't want to avoid fat. We want to embrace healthy fats because remember, fats are the other energy source. So we can use healthy fats to stabilize our blood sugar, stay full and energized between meals without spiking our blood sugar. And fats spike our blood sugar the least, almost zero impact on our blood sugar, and they help to lower the blood sugar response from other meals. So, and same with protein. So if we put the fats and proteins together and then have a carbohydrate, our blood sugar spike is going to be so much less. It's like this magic trick that we can actually reduce our blood sugar spikes if we have lots of good proteins and healthy fats, and also fiber from vegetables like green vegetables at our meals. These things actually slow the absorption of the glucose into our bloodstream, and we get almost no blood sugar spike when we have our food this way. So the way you want to set up your plate to eat is you can have some non-starchy vegetables. So that would be starchy vegetables are things like potatoes and corn and like butternut squash and things that have a lot of carbohydrates in them. But the lower carb ones like broccoli, asparagus, greens, peppers, tomatoes, onions, things like this, these vegetables, if we have these vegetables, we can have those first. If we drizzle some vinegar on them, the vinegar actually helps to reduce the blood sugar spike as well. So that's why some people drink apple cider vinegar before their meal. You could do a little shot in like an inch of water, put a sprinkle of cinnamon for the taste. And if you don't have the vinegar on your vegetables, you can just take a little shot of it. That will also lower the blood sugar spike from your meal. That's a great hack. So we have our vegetables, and then we eat our fats and proteins, and we save the carbs for last. So that just means eat your carbs last on the plate, and you will have a much reduced blood sugar spike from that meal. You'll probably find that you feel less tired afterwards. You feel more energized. You have fewer cravings, and you can go longer between eating. So it's amazing that when you build your plate this way, you're setting yourself up to only have to eat 3 times a day. You won't have to snack, because snacking, I always say there's no such thing as a healthy snack, because snacking is not healthy, because snacking spikes our blood sugar. Of course, there are those people, I work with a lot of people who have what's called reactive hypoglycemia. Their blood sugar is crashing all the time, and they have to eat multiple times a day. So I'm not suggesting that they don't do that, but I'm suggesting perhaps if you're struggling with that, to work with me, because the goal is to be able to go longer between meals. The reason we want to go longer between meals is because every time we eat, we're going to spike our blood sugar and insulin a little bit. And it's okay. I mean, some of the time we need to. That's totally fine, right? We don't want none, or else we'd be dead. But we don't want to do it often. So if we're snacking between meals, we're always spiking that blood sugar insulin, and the insulin doesn't have a chance to come down. And so we get that chronic rise in insulin. So if we can eat breakfast and then not eat again until lunch, we give our insulin a chance to come down and reset. And then we eat at lunch, it goes up a little bit. And then we don't eat till dinner, it comes down and resets. So that is setting us up for success. For healthy blood sugar is actually to only eat a few times a day. We don't want to be eating. That's actually going to help your metabolism, not hurt it. It's going to help it be able to access your body fat. Our metabolism is just our body's ability to use any source to get energy. So it should be able to use our body fat. It should be able to use dietary fat that we're eating. It should be able to use the sugar that we store in our liver. But an unhealthy metabolism is an inflexible metabolism, and one that can only use carbs, usually because there's so much insulin. Insulin says, nope, you can't use this fat. You can't have it. You don't see it. And so it keeps you stuck on the carbs. Is that sort of making sense?
Yes.
I see you processing.
I know, I am. I'm like, oh
yeah.
my goodness. I mean, there's so much. And then, I'm just thinking about people too. It's like, this is a process, getting to get your blood sugar stabilized and to undo all of the years, I mean, from childhood into adulthood, that we've been unintentionally wreaking havoc on our blood system and setting all of the systems in our bodies up for disease, truly, is what we wound up doing in the way that we eat and how we go about it. So it's mind-blowing to even think setting your plate up in that way can impact your ability to process and absorb food and to do all of those things. So you're not going overboard and creating those crashes that so many people are used to living in.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one that is just a really simple hack is don't eat what I call naked carbs. So naked carbs are carbohydrates by themselves and or without a significant amount of like protein to kind of slow the absorption. So a lot of people will bring like an apple as a healthy snack. For me, an apple is not a healthy snack because it just spikes your blood sugar and then it kind of crashes it. If I were to eat a fruit by itself, I get this like almost like this empty feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it makes me feel so hungry. And that's because it's dropping my blood sugar. It kind of gave me a taste of some glucose, but there was no protein there to actually nourish and satiate me. And so, a better idea for a snack would be if one had to have a snack. I feel like I'm allergic to the word snack. My students and my clients know that we call them mini meals. So if you can't make it from one meal to another, I don't suggest you snack. I suggest you have a mini meal, because if I think snack, what kind of foods am I thinking
Those convenience
about, right?
foods, right? Yes.
Yeah. Versus if I can't make it to the next meal because I'm actually hungry, that's okay. Maybe I can look at the meal before it and be like, maybe I didn't eat enough protein. Maybe I didn't have enough fat at that meal. So you can adjust next time. But if I say, I'm hungry, I need a mini meal. What do you eat at a meal? You eat proteins, fats, vegetables, fiber, So if you set yourself up with a mini meal, maybe it looks like a hard-boiled egg and some veggie sticks and some guacamole, right? There's the protein, there's the fiber, there's the fat. And then we don't have that spike of blood sugar. And so we feel really satiated. That's a really satiating meal that can keep us really, really energized.
I love looking at it in that way, as a mini meal versus a snack, and just reframing that, because it does almost make you go, oh wow, I'm going to make a healthier choice with this when you hear that.
It's just the language.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's kind of like a, tricking your brain, where it's like, no, we're having a smaller version of what we would normally eat, not, here I'm going to go reach for the chips because it's time to snack. And that's what snacks so commonly are. So I really love that reframing of it. With something, I feel like people with sugar, a lot of times is they're like, I don't want to eat fruit at all. You'll hear that with people. What's your takeaway with that? It's always
because it's too sugary.
Yes. People will say that, and I'm like, oh.
So I think that when it comes to blood sugar issues and health in general and nutrition in general, we have to remember that everything is extremely bio-individual. So for me, I started out eating a lot of carbohydrates on my standard American diet. And when I went paleo, guess what? I still had a ton of carbohydrates. Even though I was eating a healthy whole foods diet, I was eating whole plantains at a time, entire sweet potatoes at a time, a banana blended in my iced coffee with coconut milk and coconut sugar, acai bowls, smoothies, juices, plantain chips, Lara bars, kombucha. I was drowning in carbohydrates. I was eating too many for my body, even though they were the whole food healthy form. So what I needed to do was, I was having so many carbohydrates, I needed to pendulum swing the other way. And I need to really drastically lower my carbohydrates for a period of time in order to heal. So the way I did that was just taking my paleo carbs, I took those out and added more fats, and my plate became a ketogenic macro plate, right? That's not really important. My body went into nutritional ketosis, and that was a really therapeutic healing strategy for me. And so I went that pendulum swing the other side, really lowered the carbs. And I needed to work on, like, my biggest goals were to have a regular period, no more PMS, no more PCOS symptoms, no more acne, lose body fat, feel energized, not have cravings. That was one of my biggest ones. And so during that time at the beginning of my keto journey, I had raspberries and blueberries because they're low carbohydrate fruits. And that's fine. That fit my macros and it was totally fine, but it drove cravings for me. I was very sensitive. I was such I always say my sugar dragon was just like out and about making all the decisions for me. Like, oh, you had a raspberry? Why don't you go buy a pint of ice cream? I was like, come on. So
just like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to, for a period of time, not have raspberries because they were driving my cravings.
That makes sense.
So I healed. I took my time doing these things. I used certain strategies, intermittent fasting. And then I no longer had symptoms of PCOS, PMS, got rid of all my cravings, was great. And then I could swing back the other way. And I think this is really important because I'm sure people have heard of keto. I'm sure people have heard of the dangers of keto. And I think that looking at ketosis as a therapeutic protocol that we do for a period of time to heal can be extremely powerful. But we don't want to stay there. And I would love to go on the record saying this. We don't want to stay in ketosis because ketosis was a really wonderful strategy that our body goes into this state where it's overriding the need for glucose. It's using ketones as fuel. It's amazing for the brain. It regrows neurons. They're anti-inflammatory. All these things. It can heal your metabolism. But that's what our ancestors did in the winter or when food was scarce. And so just like fasting, we have adaptive benefits that it's a hard stressor on the body, but the body adapts and gets stronger. Exercise, it's hard, it's a stressor on the body, but the body adapts and gets stronger. But only if we're strong enough to tolerate it and if we do it for a short enough amount of time. If we do this for too long, then we won't be able to adapt. The stressor will beat us, right? And so it'll become distress, not eustress. So same thing with ketosis. It's a tool. Same thing with carbohydrates. They're a tool. They're energy. So we have to look at how much do we need and what is that like benefit. So ketosis was healing for me until I started to have a backslide in my symptoms. I'm like, oh, I need carbohydrates now. So then I started adding in those real food carbohydrates. And guess what? I do great with raspberries now. Eating some raspberries does not equal go get a pint of ice cream. It's like, I had raspberries. This was fantastic. Now I'm going to go move on with my day.
Yes.
Because I was able to heal. So I don't think there's a yes or no answer. I do think that many fruits are very high in sugar. So tropical fruits, bananas, pineapples, mangoes, they're very high in sugar. So when we look at eating carbohydrates, sometimes I think the biggest thing for so many people is just the quantity. Like we're eating an entire banana with like 29 grams of carbs. Like don't eat an entire banana. Like unless you're about to like crush a CrossFit workout or something, like we need to eat the right amount of energy for our body's demands. So if we're overeating energy, we're probably going to store it. And so that's a big thing when it comes to like finding, should I have carbs? Should I not? Think about how do you feel after you eat? Like, do you have body fat, but no energy? that probably means you need to lower your carbohydrates. Do you have any of those symptoms that I was talking about? We can lower those carbs, and of course, no vegetable oils. But if we are feeling great, we could miss meals, we could skip meals like by accident. Like the other day, I skipped a meal by accident, and then I forgot to eat dinner, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to eat dinner. And then it was too late to eat. I was like so mad, but I was fine. Right. So even though I'm not in ketosis, my body still has this flexible metabolism because of what I gained when I was there. And so now I have this freedom to like, oops, I missed a meal. That doesn't usually ever happen to me, but it's not like a regular thing.
Yes, but to know if it does, and you're not going to get hangry and be shaky and have all of those reactions happening. Because, being hangry and then getting into it with your partner is not great, right? And then you go, exactly. I'm sorry, I was hangry.
I'm sorry for the person I was when I was hungry.
Yes.
Like, we shouldn't have to send out these little Hallmark cards apologizing for how we were when we were hungry.
When we were hungry, exactly. No, that is so huge, and that's so big. And I know there's so many people out there who can relate to just that. So, I'm so grateful for the programs that you've put together so other people don't have to totally go back to school and change their whole careers, just to help people with this. Like you've put that work in, and you are out here doing it. And it's just amazing to see the shifts that you've created, not just in your own life, but what you're doing for others too. It's really, really incredible.
Thank you.
I know you've got your programs all listed online. So we're going to have your links and everything directed to your site. Is there a specific program that people should look at in getting started with you?
So to get started, I have so much information on my Instagram page and my podcast called Unlock the Sugar Shackles. And I think it's really helpful to kind of go and, look through this information, listen to some episodes to really understand how this stuff works and how you can apply it to you. So my signature program is called Blood Sugar Mastery, and it runs basically once a quarter. So it's a group coaching program, but I do individual one-on-one coaching within that. There's video modules so you can learn all about this information, and then I help you customize it to you, because I was talking about that bio-individuality piece, that everyone needs someone different. If someone's type 2 diabetic, they're going to need something really different from someone whose blood sugar keeps crashing, or from someone who is like eating a standard American diet versus someone who's been doing keto for 3 years. But everyone who has blood sugar issues is welcome to come in that program, because you learn this set of information that's really helpful for you, and then we customize it to you, and so it fits your lifestyle. And that is my signature program. Like I said, it's once a quarter, so the next time it'll come out will be spring 2023, and that is a really great place to start. And I am sort of in the works with some smaller programs as well. So right now that's my biggest option. And then I do have a reactive hypoglycemia masterclass if you're someone who kind of relates to that hangry, the blood sugar crashing, you feel dizzy between meals. A lot of people on anxiety meds, or even if your doctor's told you it's not your blood sugar, because you can have like a blood sugar crash at any number, and then it gets really tricky, a lot of gaslighting from doctors. And so that's a shorter class that a lot of people take, and that can really help you get the tools to stabilize your blood sugar, because that could be really, really debilitating.
Yes, and since you've gone through so much with your own process, you're so well versed in all of this, and I just think it's so important to have somebody like you on your side as you're trying to work through all of this stuff. There's one thing just to have the information, but there's another thing to have the experience, and I think what you've went through and what you've healed is just so powerful. So if anyone out there is listening, is struggling in these same ways, Dani is here for you, and she is just an incredible wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing, that food is not the only thing that impacts our blood sugar. Our stress, our sleep, and our movement are and of course our connections and community are some of the other really, really important things. So our stress can drive up our blood sugar. And so, using these other modalities and prioritizing sleep and going for a 10-minute walk after your meal, that's another amazing hack for your blood sugar. The only snacks I like are movement snacks, where you break up your movement into little times throughout the day. And social interaction, lowering your stress levels by getting a massage or going to a yoga class. These things are not woo-woo. They actually are really, really important and can actually help your metabolic health. So it's a whole picture, and that's why it's holistic, and all these pieces matter. And so the nutrition is just the part that I mostly focus on, because it can be really complicated, but you're doing a really wonderful thing for yourself whenever you practice self-care and massage and acupuncture and all those wonderful modalities. You're also helping. And so you could eat the most perfect diet in the world, but if you're a stress case and you're not doing your self-care, you're not moving your body, you're not going to feel optimally healthy. And so I just wanted to make a little plug for those other important modalities as well.
Yes, it is. It's the whole picture. We can't just work physically, mentally, or nutritionally on ourselves. We have to encompass all of the different things, because that's where true healing takes place. So I'm so glad we could have you on to share about what the heal it is that you have going on. And I can't wait for all the people who are going to, resonate with your work through this podcast and to find you and work with you too. So thank you. Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Danielle. It's been amazing having you on, and I have 2 pages of notes here, so I took so much in just listening to you. Thank you for sharing yourself.
Yeah, happy to help and happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor.
Yes, truly. Thank you.